Hello again, and welcome to the St. Louis Blues Hockey Legends Podcast. Tom Calhoun here to shine a light on the stories of those instrumental in blues history. The Blues Legends Podcast is presented by Sarah Honda, O'Fallon, Illinois. Check out their 618 Sarah Bucks offer at sarahhondaofallon.com. A participating sponsor is the Gateway Grizzlies. The Nike baseball camp is coming soon for young baseball players. Visit gatewaygrizzlies.com for details. On this episode, we visit with another former captain of the Blues, number 42, David Backes. A native of Minneapolis suburb Spring Lake Park, he became the first and only American-born captain of the Blues in 2011. He was drafted 62nd overall by the Blues in the 2003 entry draft and played 2 years of junior hockey and 3 years of college hockey at Minnesota State, where he was named to the ESPN Academic All-America First Team. He joined the Blues roster in 06-07 and was a mainstay until signing a free agent contract with Boston after the 2015-16 season. Lots to catch up on with David Backes. We'll get started in 60 seconds.
When it's time to find your next car, what's changed in your life? What's driving you to start the process? What are you really looking for? These are the questions we're asking at Sarah Honda. We believe in real communication, real problem solving, and trustworthy long-term relationships with our customers. We're part of your community, and we want you to be part of ours. At Sarah Honda, the experience drives everything. You've got a lot going on in life, and you depend on your car to get you to places you need to be. So when it's time for maintenance or repair, we know you need it done fast and done right. Convenience and quality customer service with team members you can trust. That's what you're looking for. We'll get you safely back on the road and back to your busy life. At Sarah Honda, the experience drives everything.
This time around, we're happy to have David Backes, another of the Blues former captains, with us here on the Blues Hockey Legends Podcast. David, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
All is good on this end.
Good.
So before we get started, I like to look at this podcast more or less as a kind of a this is your life thing. So we before we get into hockey and some of your hockey exploits, I'd like to go back to some of the beginnings of the David Backes life, if you don't mind. Born in Minneapolis, grew up in Spring Lake Park, Minnesota. What kind of a place was that?
Little nothing town. We were a small little community, and not like we were out in the sticks, but many of the local cities were much bigger, and we were, always if you tried out for a team in our town, you made it, and other teams were cutting guys and had a little deeper talent pools to select from.
Yeah, a little bit of about 6,000 residents or so in that.
Yeah,
It's a little bit north of Minneapolis, right?
Yeah, northern suburb of Minneapolis. That with the expansion everywhere of cities getting bigger, it's been engulfed with the Twin Cities and a lot more urban. But it's somewhere that holds a special spot in my heart. And my in-laws still live in the house my wife graduated from high school in.
Wow. So you're definitely Minnesotans, no doubt about that. David and Kelly, both born and bred up there. So tell us about your life as a kid, mom, dads, sisters, brothers, and all that.
Mom and dad, really supportive. Dad played some junior college baseball, so a little bit of athleticism in the family. My mom had my sister when she was like 21 years old, so they had kids kind of young and did a great job raising me and my sister. So just the two of us, and then rescued a dog in like sixth grade. That was our only pet when I was growing up, other than maybe a couple goldfish that lasted a week or two and then went belly up and found the toilet.
Don't last long.
Yeah. But yeah, lower middle class family. Never really thought I missed out on anything, but we're definitely conscious of what we're spending, when we're spending it, and being efficient, and really good morals, I think, that were instilled in me in a young age things like if you sign up for something, you're going to finish it. You don't have to do it next year, but you got to finish what you start. And, um, those types of nuggets were planted all along my childhood, and really grateful that I had them.
Yeah, it sounds like a great upbringing. So, what about your hockey influencer? Who was the person that pointed you in the direction of hockey, or was there someone in the family?
Well, said small town. We started playing baseball at T-ball when we were 5 years old, and season was over and it was getting cold, and all my buddies were going to play hockey, and I followed along with them. As an introduction, my mom got me some skates, put me out at open skate, and first time I stepped on the ice, I did the old slip backwards, cracked my head on the ice, no helmet on, no gloves on. I was ill prepared, ill equipped, and never wanted to go on the ice again. Well, my friend's father, after I got the proper equipment, took me out there and showed me a couple techniques, and held onto the boards for a couple times around, and then I was off and running, and enjoyed the sport, being with my buddies and all the things that it brings you.
So it was a less than glorious start to the Backus hockey career, but I'm glad you stuck with it. So talk about your current family situation a bit. Who's important to you in life in 2025, and what are they all up to?
Parents are still around. Sister's still around. She's got a daughter who's 16, almost 17, going to be a senior in high school next year. I have still married to Kelly, and we have two children. Stella's almost 10. She'll be 10 in a couple of weeks, and then Dawson's 7.5. And they're just incredible kids to watch them grow up and blossom into young adults and responsibility. And Stella's caught on to swimming this year, which I hate swimming. I don't do anything. I don't, I mean, I can swim and not drown, but the idea of swimming from one end of the pool to the other and then turning back around again seems foreign to me. But she's embraced that challenge and really excelled at that. So I think I might have found her passion in life. And then my son got into hockey 2 years ago, and he enjoys it. I wouldn't say he loves it or he's extremely passionate about it or wants to play it all the time, but he's he still wants to sign up for next year, just rec league, which is great. And then he plays baseball as well. Keeps them busy. They love playing with friends, and doing really well in school. So all those things, wrapped up into a big ball, or make us proud parents.
Yeah. So you told me before we got started, you're living in the Nashville area these days. Is your son going to have programs to, you know, further his hockey interest?
They're developing. They're coming along. I think the way that Kachuk and Jeff Brown helped the St. Louis area really blossom with their youth hockey. I feel like that's happening in Nashville right now with Martin Erat and some of the other alumni that are around there starting programs, helping um, coach the younger kids. And a lot of guys that didn't play in Nashville have retired and moved there and have kids in the programs. Ryan Smith and Bobby Ryan, Andy Sutton, just a great group of guys that love the game and are in the area and want to, help out however they can. So all those things hopefully bode well that he'll have options. And if he says, tomorrow he doesn't want to play anymore, that's fine too. And he can find whatever he really loves to do, and I'll support him in that.
Awesome. Yeah, but you're going to have teenagers pretty soon. You got to watch out for that.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that. So as it comes, we'll deal with it and roll with the punches.
Yeah. So you and Kelly are famous, somewhat famous at least, for Athletes for Animals. You got that going back in 2013. What's the latest with your efforts there?
Yeah, we've teamed up with ProPlan and Purina the past 3 years and had some great, partnerships with them. We're still funding animal initiatives all across the country to help animals in need. Still teaming up with athletes to spread organizations and legislative platforms across our country and Canada, and just trying to do good wherever we can poke our heads in. And Athletes for Animals has been a great conduit for us to do that.
Yeah. So anything we can do during this podcast to help your efforts in any way?
I think, if anyone wants to help out, athletesforanimals.org. and check out our site. There's a lot of great organizations and programs that we funded through a semi-annual grant program. And then, if you want to donate or volunteer with some of those organizations, they're always looking for hands to help and walk animals, clean kennels, those types of things that uh, help those dogs and cats get out of there and get into a forever home and have a better, more fulfilled life elsewhere.
What's the animal population like at your house?
Uh, Two resident dogs. We currently have a mama foster who had 7 puppies that we had for a while, and now they've all gone to other homes, and now we've just got mama as a lingering member of that pack, which she's such a great dog and um, really, actually, she's part shepherd, and we've never had a shepherd mix, so she's patrolling the edge of the yard and looking for some little animal to show its face so she can chase it down. And she just tons of energy and a wonderful dog.
6 Chihuahuas at our house. We have done dog shows for a while, and our first Chihuahua was a rescue, so that's kind of what got the ball rolling. And
Awesome.
and it's a lot of noise here, but we love it.
That's
So
good.
yeah.
Come out to
So
Arsenal
let's
BG Ballpark in Sauget to celebrate All-American Weekend with us, July 3rd through the 5th. Enjoy patriotic vibes, our famous baseball's best burger, and don't miss the All-American themed jersey off the back auction. Each night ends with fireworks with super shows on July 3rd and 4th. Then on Sunday, July 6th, it's time for car lovers to rev up their engines for our classic car show preview game, powered by Keishi and presented by Gateway Classic Cars. Show off your ride and get 2 free game tickets when you pre-register. For more details, visit gatewaygrizzlies.com under the schedule tab.
Yeah. So let's move along to the David Backus career a little bit. You talked about your early exposure to hockey and all of that. 3 years at Spring Lake Park High School. Hockey's a big deal in Minnesota. That had to be a lot of fun, those years that you played high school hockey.
Yeah, and I would say now moving all across the country, I didn't know how good I had it being there with every town having their own team that can field their own team. Rinks, I grew up with, I think it was 6 rinks I could ride my bike to and these are indoor rinks. There was outdoor rinks as well that were at my fingertips in the winter months. And just that access to hockey and then that pride that came with and that community it built when you're playing with people from your own town and you're able to stay with those guys, play hockey, play baseball, tennis, soccer, whatever you're doing, it's with the same group of kids. And to me, that was so great looking back on it, not thinking that, every kid doesn't have that opportunity. And I certainly had that opportunity. And now, for my son to go skate, it's a 30-minute drive to get to a rink for him to strap it up and makes it much more of an adventure. And doing that more than a couple times a week, I'm sure would wear on a family. So that was Spring Lake Park, I guess. High school, we were a smaller school. We would probably a 500 team when we had good years, get beat up by the big schools and hold our own and do pretty well against the smaller schools.
Yeah, but you must have made a pretty good impression right off the bat in high school hockey. You were a finalist in '02 for Minnesota Mr. Hockey. You remember who won that?
Gino Geyer, guy from northern Minnesota that ended up being a Minnesota Golden Gopher in college. I don't know that he ever cracked an NHL lineup, but
Doesn't ring a bell. Yeah.
he
Well, at least he stuck with you. That name. Was there a second and third place guy or just Mr. Minnesota?
you were either first or one of the other 9 guys, and I was one of the other 9 guys. And no hard feelings. Another one of those moments where maybe it's not the success you want in the moment, but it can be a motivator and push me to be better and to, try to prove some people wrong that they picked the wrong guy, and that's totally fine.
Well, we kind of know a little bit about the David Backus drive, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. So, somewhere in there, you must have figured, this hockey thing might work out for me. You do 2 years with the Lincoln, Nebraska Stars in the U.S. Hockey League. Tell us about that experience.
Great experience for me. In high school, I was 6'3", 185 pounds, and long legs, long arms, but just, and I wasn't uncoordinated, but I needed more time to develop into my body and put some meat on my bones and grow into a man from, the kid I was in high school. And Lincoln really afforded me that physically, but also as a stepping stone to be away from my parents for the first time, but also having a billet family I could live with that looked after me. And I actually lived with a husband and wife cop in
Huh.
the city of Lincoln. So learned a few things from them and had a different glimpse into what a different family's life looks like, but also had someone checking in on me and had a little bit of freedom too. So in all those regards, personally, school wise, from a hockey standpoint, that was an awesome experience for me. Met a lot of great, you know, you start to get your eyes open to how big the hockey world is when you've got guys from North Dakota on the team and Danny Ehrman and Ryan Patolny, who are, guys that played in the NHL and great players. You start teaming up with them and you're like, I never heard of these guys and they're only a state away. What else is, we had Swedish import from Sweden that came in and Per Mars, and you're like, who is this kid? Where do they find this kid, and how does he end up here? And then we had a lot of success in Lincoln. We won the regular season and the postseason championship, and I think that lifted everyone's stock for the draft and got a lot of guys scholarships for um, what their college life would be next.
Yeah, Lincoln, Nebraska. I almost spent a little time there myself. Had a broadcasting opportunity there once in my young days, but it didn't work out. But great city. So, along about 2003, you're drafted by the St. Louis Blues, 62nd overall, second round in the draft. What were you thinking when that all happened? Well, did you know anything about St. Louis at the time?
Um, Not a ton about St. Louis. I'd say going into the draft, my agent was putting into my head, late first round, early second round, and did all the interviews, went to the NHL Combine, all eye-opening experiences and questions and into interview rooms. And some are very conversational like this. And then you get some of them that stare you down. They're just like, are you tough? Are you real tough or are you fake tough? And you're like, how does that even answer that question? I don't know if they're looking for fire or what, but uh, so we get to the draft and it's in Nashville actually, and I'm up in the stands with all the Newport Sports Management guys that they represent, and I was one of them. So we're in this section, and it was the end of the first round, and I saw a team. I think it might have been uh, maybe it was the Florida Panthers, and they were pointing up to the stands, and I'm like, oh, they're picking me. They're like pointing right up here, and my parents are getting all giddy, and all of a sudden, with the whatever pick it was, the Florida Panthers select Nathan Horton, and he was sitting like right behind me, and he gets up and has his moment. Anyway, it's the end of the second round, and the Blues traded, I think, the rights to Corey Stillman to move up to get the pick, and then they took me with that pick, and um, from then on, I bled blue. It was one of those things where, almost every team in the draft passed on me twice, and then I think the Blues picked Sean Bell in the first round, and
Right.
picked me in the second round, and so it was one of those things where every team had passed on me a couple times, and another motivator to. And it was a great draft. Don't get me wrong, but there was, certainly that aspect of um, a pride and a thankfulness and a gratefulness that the Blues, picked me and took a chance and wanted to see what I develop into and believed in me. And met Joel Quenneville right after that and had a little reception. Met a couple of the other guys that were drafted by the Blues, and development camp came shortly thereafter.
So, there was a little bit of fire instilled in you there as well. I'm reading that you expected to go a little higher than what you did, and so there was that I'm going to show them kind of thing, right?
There was, and I mean, I don't know if some of it's pride, it certainly is, but some of it is, um, what can this guy do that I can't, and why, maybe I just don't know what that is yet, and I haven't developed into that sort of player, but I feel like I can be well-rounded and do anything as good as anyone, and I want to prove that I can. So, yeah, quite a few of those moments and those picks where you look back now and you look at that draft and teams that drafted really well in that 2003 draft set themselves up for some long-term success. A lot of franchise players picked in that draft, and other teams that missed, it hurt them for a while.
Yeah. So then it's off to Minnesota State in Mankota to play for the Mavericks. You wind up playing 3 seasons of college hockey. Of course, the Blues keeping an eye on on you the whole time while that's going on. Were they urging you to come to St. Louis and get your career started earlier than you did, or did it work out pretty much like you both had it planned?
I don't know if it worked out how we both had it planned, and that there was a lockout in there and a missed
Yeah.
season, which kind of made the decision easy, I feel like, because that would have been my sophomore year that there was no NHL hockey. And there was, I mean, the AHL was absolutely packed with guys. There just wasn't enough spots for even a guy to come out of college if he was questionable. And then the next year, no one really knew what the league was going to look like or what all these old players were going to, be worth a dang or not when they came back after missing a year. And so it was one of those things where it wasn't going to hurt me to stay in Mankato and play one more year of college hockey. Again, I still needed to become more of a man with the college workout facilities and play 2 games on the weekend. You get 3, 4 good lifts in uh, the week after, and you're back playing another game, and you could really pack on some pounds of muscle. And I think that helped me along with, I was in a situation in Mankato where I was, even as a freshman, I was killing penalties and on the power play and playing big minutes where I could definitely develop more. And I was the captain of the team my junior year. So there was lessons still to be had. And so no regrets, I don't think, on either side. But after that season was over, the negotiations happened pretty quick and was able to sign and spend the rest of that season in Peoria to get my feet wet in the minors, which
Yeah.
again gave me a glimpse of what that next level was. And it was humbling because when you have a great college career, you feel like you're somebody, and then you realize there's a whole nother league of men that, and there's contracts and there's money and family, um, families to take care of for some of these guys, and it's bigger stakes than just having fun on a Friday, Saturday night and playing for your school. And that was great lessons for me.
Yeah. Who was coaching at Peoria that year?
Dave Basigio and
Don't recognize the name.
Larry Plow was the GM in St. Louis.
Yeah, right. So 31 games in Peoria before you were called up to the Blues in 06, 07, and away you go. You're a member of the Blues and you're there to stay. But as you mentioned earlier, it was kind of a rough time for the team back in the early 2000s. The ownership changed from the Laurie family to the Checketts ownership group. And so it was a little rough time for those of us who worked for the Blues. You signed an offer sheet with Vancouver as a restricted free agent in '08, but the Blues quickly matched it. So that told you something about how they felt about you.
Yeah, you make those years seem a lot smoother than they actually were. With there was
So
12,000 people in the
kind
then.
of gave a abridged version there. So
In the Scott Trade Center, there's 12,000 people in the stands, and we were terrible. I mean, I remember it was slim pickings, and um, as a young guy, you're just hoping to still have a jersey in your stall the next day. A lot of those days, especially when the team's so bad. But it was Jay McClement, Lee Stempniak, and myself as kind of the young guys back then, and we were on a line most nights with Andy Murray coaching, and a good coach to have when you're a young guy because he was very focused on teaching and all the details of the games. Ray Bennett as an assistant coach, and Brad Shaw would break down the video and help you out. And those were instrumental years. Andy Murray shifted me to a center, and I had to learn the position in the NHL and game action really. And thankfully, I was able to, and turned out to be a big asset for me to play in the middle of the ice. But the Central Division back then was, there was a ton of huge, or the Western Conference even, huge center icemen that we just didn't have the firepower, the size of players to match up against them. And needed a little more meat, and I was one of the guys for the job. So a lot of learning. The offer sheet again was I'd only played a year and a half in the NHL, and I talked to my agent. I was hoping for a one-way deal. If I could make $1 million on a one-way deal, that's what we were hoping for. And uh, the Blues never offered me a contract, and it was July 1, and Vancouver came calling with $7.5 million over 3 years. So to me, that's one of those things where when you go from wanting to make $1 million, which is no small amount by any means, to I could have life-changing money. Whether I want to go to Vancouver or not, this is something that, from a business standpoint, just has to be done. So, sign the offer sheet, and the Blues had 7 days to match, and John Davidson called me a couple hours later and said, we're gonna match, big boy. You're gonna stay in St. Louis. You're gonna be a part of this for a long time. And I'm like, all right, perfect. I got a great contract, and I'm where I've comfortable with and been for a long time. So that was a crazy moment. Hey, it was in Hawaii on my honeymoon at the time, so it was a lot of action for the honeymoon.
I bet. That was something to celebrate there, you bet. And I remember now that you're mentioning that time in Blues history. So you're re-signed with the Blues in '09. You play in the Global Series over in Sweden, and I went on that trip myself. I did the PA for those games over in Stockholm, and playing the Detroit Red Wings, who had just won the Stanley Cup. You guys weren't supposed to win those two games.
No, we weren't, and then we won them both, and we partied like we won them both. It was crazy. We're in Sweden. It's the start of the season, and you're not expected to win either game, and we end up winning them both. They had, Zetterberg and Lidstrom, and they had the Swedish superstars that they were trying to showcase, and we won both games. But yeah, we had a night there like it was it was ridiculous. Like Matt Sundin was in this club that we were in, and he sent us this Magnum bottle of champagne. And I remember Eric Johnson sprayed it all over his party after that, and that was that was an interesting night out where you're trying to enjoy, but it's like two regular season wins. It's not like we've done a darn thing. So
Yeah, the NHL had put me up in the hotel where the Red Wings were staying, and after the what nights did we play? Was it a Thursday and a Friday, I think? But whatever it was, after that first game, we went to the lounge in the hotel, and Zetterberg's in there, Pavel Datsuk is in there, and a couple other guys, and they had their ladies with them, and they were trying to celebrate, but you could tell they were pretty disappointed that they had lost the game to the Blues that same night. So anyway, enough of my stuff. Let's get on to the David Backus stuff. So 2011, let's go to September 9th, 2011. You become the 20th captain in Blues team history. This happens after Eric Brewer is traded to Tampa. So what were you thinking when you got the call that you were going to be captain?
if it were that simple, I don't know what I would have thought. The process was Army talked to me and said, "Hey, we're thinking about naming you captain, but we want you to meet with a sports psychologist first." So I flew to Toronto and met with a sports psychologist for I think 4 hours in a hotel room, and went through everything from ink block tests to like he'd show me some random picture and I'd have to tell him a story about it. And we get through this 4 hours and he's like, "All right, David, you know what? I think you'd make a great captain for the Blues." And um, I continued to talk with him my whole time as a captain, just bounce things off him, kind of a sounding board. And I don't know what I could have done in that uh, psyche valve, for lack of a better term, to screw that up and to not be the captain. But it verified that I was good material for it, and um, I think that was one of those moments in my career where I was like, "Holy crap!" I was happy to be in the NHL and maybe get an A on my jersey at some point to signify that I was part of the leadership of this team. But to be the captain, there's only 30 of them in the league. There's only been 20 in Blues history. This is quite the honor, and with that honor came a lot of responsibility and a lot of weight to do it proud of guys that had worn it before me. Guys that I played with in St. Louis, Dallas Drake, and then Eric Brewer that wore the C. But the Hall of Fame pedigree that came before them with the guys in St. Louis who wore the C. Um, all those guys trying to do them proud and do them justice for the work and the pride that they felt in the emblem as well. That was something I certainly did not take lightly.
Since you mentioned the words Hall of Fame, do you think about that at all? Is that in your um, things that you hope for?
I mean, it's certainly out of my hands. I've done what I've done on the ice. I also see some of the accolades that those guys have, and I'm not sure that I'm up to snuff with that. But for even you to even mention that means a lot. I don't know if I'm quite there.
Well, some of us think maybe you are, but we'll leave that to the voters, I guess. Played in an All-Star game in 2011. That had to be a highlight of your career as well.
It was not to correct the chronology, but the Olympics in 2010 is a big marker for me too. To go to
Oh yeah,
Vancouver.
I was going to bring that up later, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you want to stay in the NHL? We can do that. We'll talk about the All-Star game. Yeah, another validation kind of I and Hitch would always yell at me for this. I always saw myself as a very blue collar player that I had to outwork and I had to outlast my opponent. Um, and that All-Star game on top of the Olympics kind of helped me to see myself as more than just like a third, fourth line grinder that had to do everything through hard work and tenacity, that there was some hockey ability and skill that could bust out and I could, be an impact on every game on the score sheet as well. And the All-Star game, played with uh, Patrick Sharp and Claude Giroux in that All-Star game, and
Wow.
Patrick Sharp got the MVP and got a Honda for it, and never spread that wealth with his line mates. That's for sure.
Yeah. So okay, let's go on to your international play a little bit. So you played for the U.S. Uh, World Championship tournament teams in '07, '08, '09. U.S. team didn't medal in any of those. Winter Olympics in 2014, when you played there with Oshie and Shattenkirk. No medal, but Oshie put on a show that day in the in against Russia in the shootout. What do you remember about that?
Well, I was roommates with Osh, and so after that game, which I mean, his shootout prowess is legendary in the NHL, and just what he can do and how he takes the same route and he can do five different things from it. And nobody knows what he's doing. I don't even know if he knows what he's doing most of the time, but he ends up
Get
scoring an awful
yeah.
lot. Uh, but he scored the 4 goals in the shootout, and we win the game against Russia with Putin in the audience. And
Oh,
we go, the team bus leaves, and he gets shuttled off to go do NBC interviews. And I eat and I shower. I'm back in the room, and he comes back like an hour and a half after I get back, and he's like, he's got makeup on from being on NBC, and he looks at me, he goes, "Don't you think they're making too big of a deal out of this?" And I was like, "Oh, you have no idea how awesome you just were, that you won us that game in a shootout." And that's just the kind of guy he is, one of the most amazing teammates. And that's my big memory from that tournament. Other than let's see, Dan Bilesma was the coach. Jonathan Quick was unbelievable in the tournament, and we lost to Canada 1-0 in the semifinal game, and then lost to Finland in the third place or the bronze medal game. But U.S. Canada 1-goal game to either be in the gold medal game that they end up winning, or against Sweden, or no medal at all. So it's amazing how tight that is, and pretty amazing how that's sort of shifted a little bit. Where you know the U.S. is no longer expected to lose those games, and it's a dogfight against Canada, and I love it.
Yeah. What was it you wanted to talk about in 2010? What did I gloss over there?
Oh, there was another Olympics there that was in Vancouver
Oh,
that was
yeah,
that was probably the most fun hockey I've ever played to represent my country there in North America. Family, travel wasn't outrageous to get to Vancouver, and then the city of Vancouver, the way they hosted it, where it was kind of the whole city turned into the Olympic venue. To have parents there, and then to be in that gold medal game against Canada as the last event of the Olympics into overtime.
that
Uh,
was Crosby Golden Goal game. Yeah.
for some reason, I can't get that out of my head. No, yeah, and you know, as much as it sucks, you walk away with a silver medal representing your country and know you were one goal away in overtime from a gold medal. Uh, I'm motivated to get on the other side of that, but still a pretty awesome experience.
I should have had that in my notes. That's bad research on my part.
All good. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, fill in the blanks wherever you have to. Absolutely. So let's get back to the NHL a little bit. Western Conference Finals 2015-16. Western Conference Finals against the Sharks. You win Blues 4 games to 2. Sharks beat the Blues 4 games to 2, but pretty awesome, playoff experience for a team that was struggling to be relevant, just a few years before.
Yeah, that year was special. Brian Elliott was playing out of his mind. Uh,
Yeah.
Felt like we had played LA or Chicago so many years in the playoffs when they would go on to win a cup, but we'd find them in the first round, and everyone's disappointed we lose in the first round. But the team we lost to ends up, winning a Stanley Cup. And we, when we talked to those guys in the summer, they're like, that was the hardest series we had, where you guys just pounded us, and um, then we beat Chicago in Game 7 at home that year, then go to Dallas and beat them maybe in 5 games, maybe 6.
6-1 in Game 7. Wow, you'd hardly ever see that on a road team dominating like that.
Yeah, we came out for that, and then playing San Jose, and a couple guys banged up, and ran out of gas. But that felt like a great stepping stone that we can do this. We're a couple wins away from the Stanley Cup final, and then get to that final, and we'll be a well-oiled machine. And fortunately, that was my end of time in St. Louis. But I feel like the that for the guys that were still there when they won the cup was a great stepping stone and taught a lot of lessons.
So yeah, you mentioned it, and that was your contract year, 15-16. Then you're a free agent and sign a 5-year deal with the Boston Bruins. What was going on behind the scenes at that time? Was Army making a strong push to re-sign you at that point, or what was the climate like?
What was it? There was some negotiations early in the year, and I wanted that. I wanted the 5th year. I wanted to be a Blue for my whole career, and wanted to retire there. And he would not go past 4 for anything. And then the dollars weren't too far away, but without that 5th year, there was certainly a gap there. And then after the season was over, I think he brought, was it Troy Brower, myself, and Steve Ott maybe brought us into the room and just said, "I'm going to offer contracts, and whoever takes them first, those will be the guys here." And we might run out of money by the time other guys take them. And Troy, myself, uh, Steve, I don't even know what happened to Otter after that year, but um, neither of us ended up signing there. And free agency came along, and there were a couple teams with the 5th year and a bigger dollar amount, and unfortunately, we went in different directions.
Yeah. So, how would you characterize your experience in Boston after that? Was it satisfying for you, or was it disappointing? How would you look at it?
It was a lot of learning never have been, only knowing St. Louis for 10 years of my career, not knowing how other organizations, operate or act. Going to original six team, I had some assumptions in my head on how it was going to be. And, the pedigrees of Bergeron and Chara and Marchand and Krejci in the locker room, Tuukka Rask in the net, figured it was, going to be this unbelievable culture that would, take care of itself. And, there was a little bit of a reckoning to what reality was when I got there. And we, all had to bind together to try to make the situation the way that we had desired to. And those guys were looking for another couple runs before they were done playing. And we built it. We built it from, you know, being disjointed to something, the team made the playoffs every year that I played there and ended up playing the Blues in the finals in my third year there, or
Hmm.
second year, yeah, whatever it was. And so there was a lot of growth. Got to live on the East Coast and experience a big city and what that was like. And um, I don't think we can go back to those times of like, oh well, if I would have stayed in St. Louis, would we have won a cup in my third year of my new deal? I mean, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I would have been the anchor pulling the team down. Who knows? Maybe I was the anchor pulling the Bruins down. Maybe it was all just meant to be the way it was. So we don't look backwards. We're thankful and grateful for the experiences we had, the people we met, and I would have loved to have won a cup there, but it just wasn't in the cards.
Yeah. And part of your experience there was a health challenge you had in 17, 18 with your diverticulitis, and you had to have surgery for that. I assume you've recovered. You look well.
Yeah, thank you. I did have surgery there mid-season, which really wasn't optimal, and made some lifestyle choices just dietary wise. I was a full carnivore at that point. It was 2 pound rack of lamb with some veggies, and that was what I was eating. And doing a little more looking into it, knowing or learning that those are slow digesting foods with diverticulosis as a predisposed condition to diverticulitis, that I needed to clean it up and make sure everything was moving through me and extra fiber and less, red meat. So made some dietary changes from that. When you're 33 sitting in a hospital room after just having a major surgery, you really start to think of like, why I feel like I'm in great shape. I take care of myself, but why am I here? And what can I do to not be back here? And made a couple of those changes, and um, no worse for the wear, and continue to, yeah, be active and try to take care of my controllables whenever I can.
So no more racks of lamb, huh?
Unfortunately, not. Even though I smell them and I start salivating, but no more.
Got to avoid those Nashville steakhouses if you can.
And the
So,
chicken, hot chicken.
what was it like sitting on the bench for the Bruins and watching the Blues hoist the Stanley Cup in your home rink? That had to be a pain in the gut worse than diverticulitis, I would think.
Yeah, you would think if I was on the bench, I would have had that experience, but
Oh, oh, I forgot that you didn't play.
I was a healthy scratch for games 5, 6, and 7. So it
Yeah.
was a 2-2 series when I was excommunicated from the finals, and watched games 5, 6, and 7 from the stands. But game 7, it was 1-0 game. It was a good game in the Garden, and Petrangelo scored with a handful of seconds left in the first, and that's when I took the elevator down, and I didn't watch another second of it. I paced in the locker room. I remember going there. I rode with my wife and my family, and I knew I was going to either leave that arena that night as a Stanley Cup champion or had a really really tough day, and it was the latter, and it was tough to swallow. It was a not having a at bat, like I some of it is regret of not being able to just be out there and try to do something that changes momentum or shifts the game. Um, because it was we the Bruins might have scored one goal with like, I don't know, 4 minutes left or something like that. It wasn't certainly wasn't a back and forth. It was after the Blues took a 2-0 lead, there wasn't a big push back from the Bruins, and I wish I could have done something to try to provide that. And there's life lessons all on the way. Sometimes you don't get control of things that happen. You got to roll with it, and that's a scenario I have.
Can't believe I'm sitting here talking to David Backus, who does not have a Stanley Cup ring, and I have one as the PA announcer for the Blues from 2019. That's amazing to me. But anyway, moving on, after that season, you're traded to the Anaheim Ducks in 2020. You would finish your career there. May 5th, 2021, your final game is in St. Louis, and the crowd showed you the love that day with a standing ovation at the Enterprise Center. I know that was an emotional moment for you. It was all over the video board that day, but kind of told you, I think, how people felt about David Backus around here.
Yeah, it was a full circle moment because when I signed July 1st with the Bruins, I was in town for Alex Petrangelo's wedding. And part of his wedding was they were going to a Cardinal game on the first. So I signed with the Bruins shortly after free agency opened. And then that afternoon, I was in Busch Stadium and they put me on the Jumbotron and I got a standing ovation there, which I was kind of shocked by. Of like, I just left in free agency and y'all are cheering for me, which is very humbling and appreciated. And then that happened again on my last game in St. Louis, like you said, with Anaheim. That game, though, was another one of those times where I didn't play much that season. It was a COVID year with very little fans, and the Ducks were not very good. I was more in a mentor role and really got paid to work out that year as the taxi squad that was carried along with the team. And I might have played 10 or 15 games with the Ducks that year. I needed to play, what was it? I think I needed to play 52 of the 56 games, and I would have got to 1,000. And I played like 10 or 15. So it was not very close. But anyway, that game was meaningless to the Ducks. And the coach wasn't going to play me, or the GM, or whoever's making the lineup at the time. And Ryan Getzlaff went into the office and just said, listen, if I have to fake an injury in warmups, or I'm not going to play if he's not going to play. Like, he should be playing. All things say that he should play this game, and they took a little deep breath and said, "All right, we'll put him in." So I got to play that game because Getzlaff pretty much went in there and said, "You guys got to do this the right way." And
Big respect, yeah.
respect. What a great guy, and yeah, forever grateful for his gesture and doing that and helping out to give me that moment.
Yeah. So a little later in the year, you sign a 1-year deal to officially retire as a member of the Blues, September 9th, 2021. How did they reach out to you for that?
Uh, it was a 1-day contract. Uh,
1-day contract, yeah.
I think the Ducks PR and Blues PR maybe orchestrated it, and the offer was presented to me, and I said, that makes a lot of sense to me from the time that I spent there, and the great memories and the way that the city and the people of St. Louis treat me and my wife. So uh, Army thought it was a great idea too, so we made it happen, and yeah, was happy to retire as a Blue for that 1 day.
That's great. And thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. You got anything you would like to tell the audience at this point that I haven't asked about?
No, I think that was a good little chat to kind of recap what my life till now has been up to.
Well, you got a long way to go. You're one of the several captains I've had on the podcast now, and thankful that you've agreed to do it. If you can stand by for a minute, I want to do a little extra something here after we wrap this up. But David, all the best to you and Kelly and all of your family, and hopefully a lot of animals are much better off for your life too.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being with me for another episode of the St. Louis Blues Blues Hockey Legends podcast. We'll have another legend coming up soon, so stay tuned to our social media for news on who that legend might be. Visit PAGuyTom.com or BluesHockeyLegends.com and sign up for our Legends email notifications. The Legends podcast is also available on the Scoops Sports Network at scoopswithdannymac.com. Video of the podcast is published the Monday after the Friday release of the audio. As always, please like and share on Facebook, X, and Instagram, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It all keeps the Legends podcast alive and well. Tom Calhoun here saying thanks for being a fan, and let's go Blues!